Hey, friend, welcome back to another episode of Unblocked. This is the podcast that helps you get out of your own way into alignment with the life that you were made for. I'm your host, Jessica Smaro, life and mindset coach, licensed therapist, mindset ninja, and fellow human doing this thing called life right alongside you. If you missed the last episode, you heard all about the new structure and format and things I'll be doing differently in 2026. And today is the first time you get to experience that. Today, I'm going to do an Ask Me Anything episode, and I invite you to keep the questions coming. Today, what I'm going to actually do is go back through. I got a bunch of questions on Ask Me Anything anonymously on Instagram. And so I'm going to go back through those questions and maybe it'll be the same answer I gave when I answered them on Instagram. Maybe it'll be different. And I don't know, there are 20 some questions here. We're not going to get through all of those today. So there might be a series. We'll get through as many as we can. So let's get started. First question. I'm going to toggle back and forth. If you're watching this, you're going to see me look back and forth between my phone and you. So, first question is best way to handle what your life is versus what you thought it would be, i.e., no kids, no husband. So, to answer this, I think it might be useful to briefly cover the framework, the mindset framework I use, which is the STEER model. I go over it extensively in the book. There's a whole episode, I'm sure, somewhere on here of the STEER model. But in short, STEER stands for situation, thought, emotion, action, result. And so the STEER model is these five interrelated components. And the situation is the neutral facts happening out in the world. The situations are things like the facts and circumstances, events of life, what people do, what your past self did, what someone says, what the weather is, what you have or don't have in your life. These are the facts of life that are totally neutral. The words your boss says to you, the way your spouse looks at you, totally neutral until you have a thought about it. And that thought is what creates the emotion and or the way that you feel. I use emotion and feelings interchangeably. So the thought creates your emotion or feeling, and that's what drives all of your actions, inactions, and reactions, which create the results that you have in your life. So if the situation is no kids, no husband, I would say those are the facts of the situation, and facts are totally neutral. I'm just gonna pause there and just notice what comes up. You might have if this was your question, dear listener, you might have a reaction to this, but just notice what comes up if you consider these are the facts. No husband, no kids, totally neutral. The pain, the discomfort, the longing, the feeling, the story comes from the meaning that you're layering on top of these facts. So thoughts like, I did something wrong, or I've missed my chance, or this isn't how it was quote unquote supposed to be. These are the thoughts that are actually creating your experience of the neutral facts, such as a husband or no kids. So I like to prompt people to ask, or use this like, intro phrase. The story I'm telling myself is. So if no husband, no kids was totally neutral, you put that in the situation line of the model, get curious and see what's the story I'm telling myself about no husband, no kids. And then you can start to see those are the thoughts, those stories are what are creating your experience of it. And I also say, at the same time, it is important to honor the feelings, right? So if there's grief, for example, or sadness, don't bypass that. The point of this work is not to reframe it too fast. You are allowed to mourn the version of the life that you imagined. And then now the shift happens when you stop turning that grief or that sadness or that story into a final verdict, or when you stop making it mean something about your future, well, two things. Your worth, well, is one thing. Like if you stop when there are facts of life that you make mean something really hard, like there must be something wrong with me that I don't have a children or a spouse yet. This is something that never is going to happen for me. There's the reason I don't is because I'm not pretty enough, smart enough, successful enough, right? Like you don't have to, or here, let me say it this way. Having thoughts like that is going to elongate the grief and maybe turn it into suffering. Okay. And then here's the other thing is that the what's happening right now doesn't necessarily have to mean anything for your future. But a lot of pain and suffering can come when we're telling ourselves really hard thoughts about a current set of circumstances in our life that we wish were different. And then we also tell ourselves that it's going to be like this forever. Okay. So I would just invite you to remind yourself, this is your life right now. right now, in this moment. And from this place, you still get to decide how you want to experience it. One, you get to decide the story you tell yourself and the feelings that you have. You also get to decide what you create next. So, a question for you to consider. If you stopped measuring your life against the version that you imagined, what would you choose to create from here? Can't wait to see if that comes up or brings up for you. Let me look at this. Oh, this one. This one was just kind of funny. Um, what conspiracy theory are you willing to entertain? This might not have anything to do with coaching, but I think it's just fun to answer some questions. And I mean, one, I just think it just kind of tickled me that this was a question. I don't actually tend to, there are no conspiracy theories that I really entertain or that I believe in. I don't really think that there's, some evil mastermind behind the scenes pulling all of the strings with malintent. But one idea I would be willing to entertain is that we've been subtly or maybe not so subtly trained to distrust our own inner guidance and outsource our knowing to quote unquote experts and systems and external authority figures. And when you're disconnected from yourself, you tend to be easier to manage. You are easier to distract. You are less likely to ask the deeper questions or to challenge. So, or the people, the systems challenge other people's beliefs, right? So, I think that in some ways, reclaiming your attention, right? Reclaiming your inner authority might be one of the most rebellious things that you can do. So that was that. What conspiracy theory? Let's see the next one here. What is the single most important piece of advice you've ever received, and how did it change the trajectory of your life or career? Oh man, I'm gonna be real honest. I struggle with the questions that are like, what's the single most? What's the best? What's your favorite? Because I'm like, I have so many. I don't know. Like, is there one? So I don't, I'm gonna say this. I don't know if this is the single most important piece of advice I've ever received that changed the trajectory of everything in my life. But a great piece of advice that I have received is because I want to is a whole reason. I'm just gonna pause there for dramatic effect. Like, if you have never heard somebody say this, because I want to is a whole reason, your brain might be like short-circuiting and glitching out. It was for me. The first time I heard one of my mentors say that, and somebody kept asking her a question about a decision she made in her life, and she said, I've answered this question. Y'all just don't like it. The reason that I made that decision is because I want to. Full stop. And I was like, whoo, we are made different. Like, she has some thoughts and beliefs that I am still cultivating. So I will say I used to feel like every decision it had to be justified. Like like I needed an evidence-based explanation, right? I needed citation and footnotes with a reference page to justify the decisions I was making. Or probably perhaps more accurately or maybe more sticky was I needed other people to validate, to co-sign, or to agree for the reason why I wanted something or why I was changing my mind or why I wanted to choose a different path. So letting because I want to be enough gave me a ton of freedom. And it helps me stop over explaining. It helps me stop overthinking. And I also started trusting that my desire isn't random. And now I actually see it as like if I want something, because if I go to the place of because I want to is enough, and I just don't even have to make that a problem, then I can actually start to hear that desire as information and guidance. And now it's an actual strategy for me. On the last episode, I was sharing with y'all, my look back of 2025 and some things that I was celebrating. And one of those things was, making the most money I'd made in my business yet. And I promise, oh, I don't know. I was gonna say, I promise I'm not gonna talk about money all the time. I'm not gonna promise that. I don't know. This feels like a growth edge for me. I feel uncomfortable talking about money. So, if it's uncomfortable, I lean into it. Um, so here's what I'm gonna say. When I could see I was really close to crossing a threshold and making the most I'd ever made. And then something happened. I was like, oh yeah, this is easily going to happen. And then there was a slight change, moving some things around at the end of the year. And I was like, oh, there's a chance I'm going to be just a few $100 short. And I started, kind of getting in my head about, well, like self-coaching ahead of time. What if I don't cross this threshold? What if I don't hit that benchmark? What am I going to make it mean? And I was finding, I was like, not a whole lot, really, right? Like it really, I was like, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to me because again, it's not really about the money, right? It's about who I'm becoming in the process, the impact that I get to have. It's about so many things that I'm exploring that I was like, if I missed this arbitrary number, it really wouldn't be a catastrophic loss. And so then I was like, well, then why do it? Like, why is it important? And the thought that ran across my head was because I want to. Like, simply because this is an arbitrary benchmark I've set for myself, I want to cross it. I set a goal and I just want to get it. Like, the analogy that was coming to me was like, if I was running a marathon and a marathon is 26.2 miles, it to me, it was like at mile 26, I'm just like, well, the end. Like, no, those point 0.2 miles matter simply because you said you were going to run a marathon, right? And here's what was interesting. As soon as I let because I want to be reason enough, I was like, okay, this is a desire. I'm going to follow my desire. And I trust that when I follow my desire, something amazing happens. And from there, I just went out and made the money. So again, I don't know if that's the best advice I've ever gotten, but that's one that I really like. Okay, next question. Um, what was that? Okay, hold on. If you could share just one truth with a stranger who feels stuck, what would it be? Well, I don't know. Whether you're a stranger or not, here might be, maybe you're a stranger to me, but the person who submitted this question. But what I would say to anyone who feels stuck is a couple of things. If you're feeling stuck, I think, it's usually for one or two reasons. One, there's a feeling you're avoiding. And again, I always like to think, how many of you heard that and were like, well, I don't want to listen to this anymore. We hate our feelings, right? We're going to lean into that. I just am throwing out there that if you're feeling stuck, again, oftentimes it's because there's a feeling you're unwilling to feel, and that feeling is keeping you stuck. The other reason is likely that you would a lot of times we feel stuck. We're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want. I don't know. Here's what I would say. You already know what you want to do next, but it's likely that your brain is spinning out with things like the how or in doubt, right? And that might sound like, I don't know the how. What if it doesn't work out? Or I need to choose the option that guarantees the outcome that I want. So, to get unstuck, ask yourself if you are willing to feel the uncomfortable feeling, whatever that might be, disappointment, fear, uncertainty, rejection, humiliation, whatever the most uncomfortable feeling is that you're avoiding, if you were willing to feel that, what might you be willing to do? And then the second question I would ask is if you weren't looking for the right answer or again, I'm using that in quotes, right? The right answer or the guaranteed option, what's one small, honest next step you take? And actually, I was just coaching a woman on this today who is making some career pivots, some career transitions. And there were a couple of things that came up when I was like, well, what do you want to do? Right. And usually, again, we shake our head in kind of disillusionment when I ask that question because we're like, I'm not really thinking about what I want. I'm thinking about what's the right next step, what's going to get me where I want to go. But when she had multiple times said there were these three things that kept coming up for her. And so I said, what if you allowed yourself to take those steps and then see what you can see from that vantage point, right? Because she was sort of like, I can't see where this would go. I can't see, maybe the money making path for this. But again, I think of it like you've probably heard me use this analogy that if you are starting in New York and you are taking a road trip to California, your headlights cannot see all the way to California. You can't even see Iowa, right? But you can see 200 to 300 feet in front of you. And when you allow yourself, like if you allow that to be enough, I can see this far. And then you just trust that then when you go on your way, you'll be able to see more. And so that's sort of when you're feeling stuck, right? You're like, you're trying to sometimes see too far down the road. You're looking for the right answer, the guaranteed option, the thing that's going to get you across the finish line, instead of saying, what do I actually know? What can I see? What can I do? And what if I let that be enough? So then what's one small honest next step that you could take? And sometimes I will say, sometimes that step isn't an action at all. Like sometimes it's just telling the truth to yourself about what you actually want. Okay, that might be the one next step to get you unstuck is just to be honest with yourself about what you want. Okay, next question. Oh, no, that's the one I just clicked on. What belief about success did you have to unlearn in order to truly help others? Oh, interesting question. Um, I would say I had to, yeah, this is interesting. To unbelieve in order to help others. So to help others, I think one of the things I had to unlearn is this idea that I have to have it all figured out in order to help somebody. I used to think that being successful meant being ahead of having the answers and presenting a polished version of myself. But what I learned is that people don't need me to be finished. They don't need me to be complete. They don't need me to be arrived. They just need me to be honest and present. They need me to be willing to figure it out. They need me to do the work required to get the talents and gifts and skills and ideas and offerings out of me and into the world. So success doesn't require a perfectly manicured product or all of the right answers. As much as some part of my brain, even as I'm saying that, I'm like, but wouldn't that be nice if we had a perfectly manicured product or all the right answers? But people don't need that from us. Success doesn't need that from us either. It requires a willingness to be in the messy middle, to take action, to miss the mark, to learn from it, and to try again. I cannot be valuable to the world if I'm not willing to be the imperfect, sometimes uncomfortable version of myself. If I'm not willing to do that work, because that to me is that messy, imperfect, nebulous, undone middle part of like bringing ideas and offerings into the world, that is very uncomfortable for me. I love, this is probably why I liked math in high school. Like there's a formula. If you just do A plus B plus C, you are going to get there. When it comes to being a business owner, when it comes to creating, if I have the idea for a podcast or a book or a course, or I'm trying to figure out new ways to teach a coaching concept, there's not a nice, clear formula for that, right? Like I have to be in the messy exploration of that. So what I've learned, that's been one of my biggest growth edges, is that in order to help people, I had to redefine that success is not getting this gold star and this perfectly manicured package out into the world. It's success for me means I'm willing to do that gritty stuff so that I can get what's in me out there and people can benefit from it. And also just this idea that waiting to be ready doesn't, again, I don't think people tend to think I need to feel ready. I think ready is a decision. So waiting to be ready or feel ready doesn't help anyone. Showing up does. Hope that helps. Next, what do most people misunderstand about fulfillment in their careers? Ooh, uh, here's a big one. Most people think that fulfillment comes from finally getting the thing, whatever that thing is for you, the title, the money, the recognition, that I made it moment. And what usually gets missed is that fulfillment only actually shows up when you are pursuing your goals, first of all, not the ones that you think that you should, or the ones that look good on paper, or the pursuits that are going to get you the dollar amount that you want. Because the thing is, you can hit all of the milestones and then still feel empty. Like if you're chasing somebody else's version of success. And another piece people often miss is that fulfillment is not a destination. I'm sad. I regret to inform you, perhaps. Fulfillment is not a destination. It is not a title. It's not a number in a bank account. It's not a corner office. It's not the 2.5 children and a dog and a white picket fence. Fulfillment is a feeling. Fulfillment goes in the emotion line of the model. And feelings don't come from arbitrary goal lines. They come from the stories that we're telling ourselves. It comes from the thoughts that we're having while we're doing the work that we're doing. So when your thoughts are rooted in pressure or comparison or self-abandonment, no achievement is ever going to feel like enough. So fulfillment comes from pursuing what matters to you and doing it in a way that lets you stay connected to yourself along the way. Let's see. I think we have time for, let's do maybe one more. How has becoming a career coach changed the way that you define success for yourself? Okay. Oh, success again. Well, first of all, I would not call myself a career coach. I'm a mindset coach, and I work with people on their careers, yes, but I also coach them on their goals, their relationships, their businesses, their health, how they treat themselves, their relationship to themselves. And none of those things actually live in separate boxes. And so, what I really help people understand is how they operate as humans, how their thoughts create their feelings, and how those feelings drive the choices that they make and the actions that they take. And once you can see that, then you can apply it to any area of your life, including career or business. And so, for me, success looks like doing work that matters. Helping people, and I'm thinking about this. I know there was just a question on success, but right now, where my brain is going is what success means for me in terms of being a coach. So I think that it's doing the work that matters, it's helping people think more clearly, and being able to pursue what I want without burning myself out or abandoning myself in the process. Also, for me, success is about setting wild, sometimes random, sometimes ambitious, sometimes confusing goals simply so that I can see who I become in the process. I think that is the greatest joy of setting goals, of going after goals, is that you get to experience and express parts of yourself that may go unused or dormant otherwise. All right, I think I'll pause. There are several more. There's so many more, but I think I'll pause there for now, and then we can pursue some more maybe next week or next month when we do the next round. And also, I invite you to submit your questions. And some of these are kind of more, general questions on concepts and success and sort of generally speaking. But there was one, on how do I navigate not having a husband or children when I would like to. So I invite you to submit any questions that you have or any coaching questions or coaching requests. This would be a great way to get some anonymous laser coaching for you. So I invite you to share that information and share your questions, share your thoughts, and they just might show up on here. So thank you all for tuning in. If you made it to the end, I'm so grateful for y'all. This again, if y'all aren't here, what am I doing this for, right? So I'm so grateful for y'all tuning in and allowing this to be a conversation. Thank you to those of you who have already reached out and gave me incredible feedback from last week's episode and giving me also some additional ideas for ways we might show up together here on this podcast this coming up year. So keep coming, keep talking to me, keep sending emails. And if you love this podcast, if you love what you're learning here, I would love to invite you to consider maybe working together. If coaching is something that you think you could benefit from, go to jessicasmile.com and check out how you might work with me. And also, friends, if you have forgotten, if you've been living under a rock and you have not seen that I wrote a book and it got published in September of 2025 and it was a number one new release. And I would love for you to grab a copy of that. And most importantly, I don't know if it's most importantly, but also very important to me would be when you get a copy, please go back onto Amazon and leave a review. I have a goal of getting to 100. I think maybe I'm at 30, so maybe y'all would help me achieve that goal. Until next time, my friend, stay open, stay free.